We resume our story in Damovotsk, Molkovia. Time could be very fleeting when one was entirely focused on one thing. Thus, 2 weeks swiftly went by after Damian awakened his memories and superpowers. Every single day from morning to night was filled with either physical or mental training, with only some rare breaks in between, either because of his growing appetite or simply due to sheer exhaustion. Even the training intensity increased exponentially as his body quickly adapted to the previous training pace. It was truly draining for him and not something he had ever experienced in the past. Still, the results were nothing short of incredible, and the feeling of constant physical and mental growth was exhilarating. That same feeling was what kept his motivation mostly intact, despite the hard toll it took on both his mind and body. Looking at the large wall mirror hanging on the gym wall, Damian exclaimed inwardly, "If I didn't experience the transformation myself, there's no way I believed I looked so frail 2 weeks ago. I mean, looking at me, it's as if I've been training for months. And that's with having great genetics. My face looks better, my skin is smoother, and my muscles feel tighter. I even grew a few centimeters. I think I was around 1 meter 71 2 weeks ago, and I should be around 1 meter 75 now. My equalized adaptation power is insane." Indeed, although his hard work could not be discounted, even someone with the best genetics in his previous life would not have been able to reach such a level in merely 2 weeks of training. It was miraculous. Apparently, he was not the only one surprised, as both Adelia and Brynhild were looking at his current shirtless torso with a speechless look on their faces. Finding their reaction adorable, he could not help but tease them. "If you keep looking, I'm gonna blush, you know?" The joking words broke the two from their stupefaction, though a light red hue briefly appeared on their cheeks as a result. Still, they were both quick to recover before Adelia stated, "It seems like I was over-worrying when I told you to be careful when training. It's a good thing you insisted on doing it." Seated on one of the benches a few meters away, Seraphine tilted her head while asking curiously, "Why are you making such a fuss, Mom? Isn't it normal to grow some muscles after training for a while?" Hearing her sister's words, Bryn replied wryly, "If you could see how he looks now, you would not use the word normal." Although he knew the reason behind those changes, Damian still asked innocently, "Do you know why I'm growing so quickly? And I don't mean my height, since that could be chalked up to puberty hitting me a bit late." After gazing into his eyes for a few moments, as if she were trying to find the truth inside them, Bryn let out a long breath and replied solemnly, "There may be a few possible reasons, but if you also take into account your growing appetite, then the most likely is that you've either awakened some kind of power or a martial art physique. Before you ask, I don't know much about the two, so I can only tell you what I know." Hearing her answer, Damian felt curious. Indeed, although he knew that there were people with superpowers in this world, he was not sure how they got them in the first place. Were they born with them? Or were those powers acquired later in life? Also, were his perks considered superpowers, or were they the equivalent of that so-called martial art physique? All in all, he had many questions, and thus chose to quietly listen to her following explanation. Seeing the interest in the young man's eyes, Bryn started, For a start, you need to know the different levels of martial artists to understand the difference between powers and physiques. Well, there are 4 levels that I'm aware of, though I'm sure there must be more than that. The one you're currently at is the skin and muscle strengthening stage, which is considered a novice martial artist. The second level is the tendon and bone tempering stage. Anyone reaching that stage is considered an elite martial artist. As for the third level, the blood chi condensing stage, it makes you a master martial artist. This is the level I'm currently at. After those last words left her lips, Bryn hesitated, prompting Damian to ask, "What about the 4th level then?" Hearing his question, a conflicted expression appeared on the woman's face as she responded. "It's the legendary Grandmaster level. It's the one I've been trying to reach for a few years now, without success. It's rumored that by reaching that stage, the body rejuvenates with life essence locked inside the marrow, which grants a much longer lifespan than the average human. Of course, that's just hearsay, and I've never even met any true Grandmaster. The only ones I've seen were superhumans, but these two are very different. Right, to make it simple, if you awaken a superpower, you will naturally reach a certain level of strength, even if you don't train." Noting the confusion on his face, she continued, "It's like a child growing into an adult, but the upper limit is locked in, with no way to grow beyond it. Also, from what I've seen so far, although powers can be extremely powerful, they can also be very weak and even completely useless. That and the fact that they can be very, one-dimensional. On the contrary, becoming a Grandmaster would give you a balanced set of benefits like strength, lifespan, etc. And the martial physique I mentioned earlier is similar to superpowers, but with no upper limit on your strength. Although the downside is you'd have to train to grow stronger. Because you've been training every day, I can't really tell which one you awakened. It could be either, honestly." Shaking his head, a small smile appeared on Damian's face as he replied, "To be honest, I don't really care which one it is, as long as I can get stronger quickly. That's what's more important." Nodding her head, Bryn replied, "You're right, but I still hope it's the latter. Anyway, I'll teach you a few martial art techniques this afternoon. If you practice them seriously, along with using the weights here, you should be able to progress even more quickly, though your growth speed is already beyond fast." Though silent outwardly, Damian pondered in his mind. From the perks effects, it should be a mix of martial art physique and superpowers. Then again, the name doesn't really matter as long as the effects themselves are good. And clearly, they are. After chatting for a bit longer, the group separated, with Damian going for a shower, while the 3 women went to the kitchen to prepare some lunch for the 4 of them. Although, among them, Sarah's help was more supportive rather than practical, as being blind made it difficult for her to do even the simplest chore. As a gentle stream of water fell from the shower head onto Damian's body, washing the sweat sticking to his skin, the young man observed his hand absent-mindedly. Even the bones in my hands grew somewhat thicker." After letting his thoughts wander mindlessly, something suddenly came to him. Well, facing guns unharmed would still be too much, but after 2 more weeks of training, as long as the enemy doesn't have any weapon, I should be able to hold my own, right? Even with my current strength, if I were to face that guy who knocked me out, I could probably fight. Well, I don't really have any fighting experience yet, so the risk of capsizing in the gutter would still be high. As seconds slowly passed by, the feeling of weakness inside him began to disappear, though the hunger also grew in tandem. After flexing different muscles, Damian wondered. Bryn said I'm considered a novice martial artist with my current strength. Skin and muscle strengthening. I'm already as strong as my previous life self, and I'd been working out for years back then. Granted, with my job, I didn't get as much time to train as I do now, but still. I wonder how strong Bryn truly is. Master martial artist, As someone participating in televised international matches, Bryn's fights could be watched on TV, and Damian had seen her many times. However, each fight had to be slowed down through a software, as the fighters' moving and attacking speed were too great for the average person to be able to see anything. Otherwise, the only things people could perceive were the clashing noises and some blurry movements when the two combatants slowed down. Thus, when it came to Damian's understanding of his adoptive cousin's strength, the only thing he knew was that she was monstrously strong. But that was pretty much it. As the memories of those fights traversed his mind, the young man clenched his fists and, with a determined tone, exclaimed inwardly, "Although the difference between us is huge, it's only a matter of time before I catch up and even surpass her. When I do, I'll see what the so-called Grandmaster level is, or even someone as talented as Bryn to be unable to reach it." We resume our story in Damovotsk, Molkovia. The following 3 weeks vanished like spilled water on a hot summer day. At that moment, Damian found himself in the penthouse gym, and more particularly on the large training mat set in one of the room's corners. There, his movements followed peculiar patterns that, although seeming strange for the uninitiated, were actually used to strengthen every piece of skin from the top of his head to the bottom of his feet, and every muscle from the smallest to the largest. Through a clever mix of stretching, squeezing, and twisting, his body gradually became stronger, with his skin taking on a leather-like toughness, and his muscles becoming increasingly sturdy, beyond what was normally possible through normal workout sessions. As the young man pushed his body toward its limits, rivulets of sweat started pouring all over his skin, while his breathing went from deep and relaxed to rapid and shallow. Having trained the martial art technique for 3 weeks now, Damian knew he was quickly approaching his physical limits, so when he started feeling lightheaded, the young man slowly stopped his movements and with the last of his strength, gently lay down on the floor, gasping for breath as his vision was filled with golden stars. Feeling as if every last bit of energy in his body had been drained, Damian mumbled between large gasps, "Damn, that was intense." On the side, Seraphine, who was previously sitting on a workout bench and kept him company, suddenly stood up and, after grabbing the clean towel and the large bottle of water she kept by her side, walked towards him while commenting in a playful tone containing a hint of curiosity. "Is it really that bad? Isn't that so-called 100 refinement techniques supposed to help you grow stronger? How come you seem more and more tired every time you practice it? Too tired to answer, Damian waited until the young woman arrived by his side by following the sound of his heavy breathing, where she swiftly patted her way to his face, her soft hand lingering more than she needed to on his strong abdominal muscles. Then she started to gently wipe the sweat from his face, making the young man feel somewhat awkward, though inwardly happy. With his breathing growing deeper, the young man replied, "Well, it's not that I'm growing weaker, it's that I'm pushing my limits every time, and since my stamina recovery keeps growing better, I've got no qualms in training until I fall from exhaustion." Shaking her head slightly, Sarah replied, while the hand holding the towel started to coincidentally move downward. "I think you're pushing yourself too much. It's not as if we're in a life and death situation, are we? I'm sure that even if you slow down a bit, your strength will still grow quickly." As the woman's hand started becoming more mischievous, Damian gently grabbed it and pushed it away from his torso, despite Sarah's barely veiled disappointment. While doing so, he commented, "Life is unpredictable, Sarah, and I'm not about to gamble mine on hoping that other people will wait for me to grow strong enough to confront them. I mean, take the great accomplishment of the skin muscle strengthening level that I'm currently at. If I'd been as strong as I am now a month ago, there is no way I would have been knocked out by that guy's single punch. Not only that, but I could have protected you all instead of being a burden." To explain clearly, martial arts consist of two things: level and combat techniques. The first elevated your base strength, and the second used the former to increase one's fighting prowess beyond normal. If one had the level but not the combat techniques, it would make it difficult for the fighter to leverage much of their strength. And if they were pitted against someone with abundant fighting experience, then the result would often be a resounding defeat. In the young man's case, however, because of his frantic training during the last 3 weeks, his fighting prowess had improved massively, though it was still unknown if he could maintain the same level in a true life and death fight. Still, he was proud of his progress, which even Bryn qualified as utterly unfair improvements. Tilting her head while wearing a thoughtful expression, Sarah responded softly, "I guess you're right. It's just that seeing you so exhausted every day, even multiple times a day lately, well, I just don't like it. If I could at least train with you, but with my eyes gone, After letting out a wistful sigh, she then added, "I feel a bit useless, I guess." Seeing the forlorn expression on her face, Damian felt a pang of pain in his heart. After all, Sarah may be a bit playful and have a hard time keeping her hands to herself, especially since his body had started growing some impressive muscles. But he could tell she genuinely cared about him beyond his physical appearance. Letting out a small sigh, he then gently grabbed her hands and uttered reassuringly, "Come on, you're the complete opposite of useless. I mean, without you being constantly by my side every time I practice, do you really think I'd push myself so much? It may sound strange, but seeing you helps me keep in mind why I need to grow as strong as possible and as quickly as possible." Hearing his words, the young woman's despondent heart fluttered with happiness as she asked, her expression somewhat expectant, "You really think that? You're not saying that just to make me feel better? Her question made him briefly chuckle before he replied. It's both, actually. It's the truth, and I'm telling you this to make you feel better. His teasing words brought an amused smile to Sarah's face before she commented. You really have a way with words, don't you? After the two bantered with each other for a bit longer, Damian noticed how the time was growing late, the hour approaching dinner time. He thus suggested they leave the room, a suggestion the young woman accepted with a cheerful expression, her bright smile warming his heart. As the young man followed Sarah outside, the two then separated once upstairs, where each went to take a shower in their respective bathroom. As the lukewarm water fell on his skin, Damian felt the sweat sticking to him being washed away, along with some of his physical and mental exhaustion. After 15 minutes of pure bliss, the young man turned off the water, grabbed a towel, and wiped his body dry before putting on the clean clothes he had prepared previously. As he left the room, his ears caught the sound of running water, bringing an amused smile to his face as he mumbled, "Women in showers, huh?" Shaking his head slightly, the young man then went downstairs, where he saw both Bryn and Leah chatting in the living room. After joining the two, the conversation shifted toward Damian's incredible improvements, as Bryn commented, "With how quickly you reached the great achievement level, it shouldn't take you long to get to the perfection level. But don't be too complacent, because many people are stuck at that level for years without being able to break through to the tendon bone tempering level. Of course, I don't think the bottleneck will stop you for long, but don't be surprised if you don't break through right away, alright?" With one being called novice martial artist and the other elite martial artist, it was not exactly a surprise that reaching that level was relatively difficult. Still, with his spark, Damian was not really worried, though outwardly he still nodded respectfully while saying, "I know, don't worry. I'm not about to become arrogant just because I gained a bit of strength. After all, in front of you, Bryn, what does my little power even amount to?" Seeing that he was taking her advice seriously, Bryn nodded and added with a light smile, "Well, I still find it hard to believe how quickly your strength improved in a single month. I hope your talent holds up as you grow stronger." Although less obvious for Seraphine because of her missing eyes, whether it was Bryn or Leah, both could see Damian's abnormal physical transformation during that single month. After all, although martial art practice improved practitioners' physical appearances, it was not to the point where someone went from being average-looking with a frail body to a handsome young man with muscles as imposing as they were well-proportioned. To the two women, it felt as if the young man's body was being altered toward both practical and aesthetic perfection. That being said, both Bryn and Leah attributed that change to a hypothetical martial art physique or superpower awakening, and thus did not comment on it. After all, it was not as if the young man knew much more than them, right? As time passed by, the conversation switched to Damian asking a few questions about his practice of the 100 refinement technique, as despite his high comprehension, there were a few points that still baffled him. As the three were deeply engrossed in their chat, the sound of footsteps caught Damian's attention, prompting him to turn his head toward the stairs leading to the second floor. There, Seraphine was walking down, her wet, bright red hair wrapped in a somewhat damp towel. Seeing her sister arriving, Bryn stated, "Now that you're here, sis, we can talk about what to do tomorrow. Are you three coming with me to Novograd for my match, or are you staying here?" We resume our story in Damovodsk, Molkovia. After Bryn asked if they wanted to come with her to Novograd or stay behind in Damovodsk, Adelia replied, "By the way, I didn't tell you, but I spoke to a few contacts of mine about what happened a month ago. The people in question are at the top of Damovodsk underworld, and none of them would tolerate someone from outside acting lawlessly in the city. After all, rules are made for a reason, and Damovodsk has its own." Hearing her words, the three felt curious about the results, with Bryn asking, "So, what did they do about it?" Nodding her head, Adelia responded, "Well, they sent their people to punish Petrovich, but the result was less than satisfactory. Even though my contacts didn't give me too many details, their words implied that there's someone behind them from Volgograd that even they can provoke. I don't have a name though." With his brow furrowing, Damian replied solemnly, "So let me get this right. You're saying that the man could attack us again and we can pretty much only play defense? Did they even tell you why they were after us in the first place?" In a voice filled with hesitation, the middle-aged redhead responded, "Well, they still warned him to behave, so the chance of that happening has at least decreased, I think. As for why he was after us, as far as I know, they didn't find out." Her words were less than reassuring, with Bryn letting out a wistful sigh before she interjected, The fact that he hasn't acted for an entire month should mean that he fears my strength, which is good news, because if he had several master martial artists, even if they were not at the peak of that level, then even I would be in trouble. So the strongest people under him should have barely reached the elite martial artist level, maybe even less than that. The words brought a wry smile to Damian's face as he commented, "Well, it may be easy for you to face those people, but they could probably beat me to a pulp in a few moves." Indeed, the disparities between each level in martial arts were tremendous. A strong novice martial artist could break wood. A strong elite martial artist could break rocks. And finally, a strong master martial artist could break metal. Now, although Damian's skin and muscles had gained in astonishing toughness akin to leather, he did not believe he could resist a punch that could break rocks. Chuckling lightly at his words, Bryn replied, "That's only if you face them unarmed, but as long as you have the right gun, even a master martial artist like me can be killed by someone at your level. Of course, that implies being able to hit them in the first place, which, granted, is far from simple." Shaking her head slightly, she then added, "In any case, now that I know that there's someone from the capital behind that lunatic, I think it's best for you three to stay here, because otherwise, the enemies would not be just random thugs with a few novice martial artists." Letting out a long breath, Adelia nodded while saying, "I thought the same thing when I learned about the situation. I just didn't want to worry you guys too much, and especially Damian, since you were so focused on learning martial arts." Seeing the concern on the three women's faces, especially on Adelia's and Sarah's, with the latter scrunching her brow tightly, Damian uttered a few reassuring words. "Alright, you three, it's not the end of the world. Like Bryn said, as long as I've got the right gun, I'll be able to take care of anything that Petrovich can throw at us. Speaking of which, Bryn, do you know where I can get that kind of gun? Hearing his words, a faint smile appeared on the muscular redhead's face, who replied, "Of course, follow me upstairs." As soon as these words left her lips, both of them stood up before Bryn started walking towards the staircase. As for Damian, he briefly patted Seraphine's and Adelia's shoulders, after which he swiftly followed the tall woman. It did not take long before the two arrived at Bryn's room, where the latter then moved toward a waist-high piece of unadorned wooden furniture. After grabbing and pulling the wood panel handle towards her, the cabinet immediately unveiled a simple-looking safe with a digital code panel in the middle. Entering the code, it was then the metallic panel's turn to open, displaying its contents to the two people. Curious, Damian looked inside and noted the presence of a heavy handgun with several bullet boxes, multiple stacks of Molkovian bills, and many important-looking pieces of paper. There were even a few small wooden boxes, though the young man could not tell what they contained. Noting Damian's gaze on the wooden cases, Bryn explained while grabbing the gun, the ammo, and 2 empty magazines. These are some precious blood chi elixirs. Their role is to help martial artists at my level to condense more chi blood. But since I can't progress further for now, I only keep them to serve as replenishing medicine. In any case, they are too potent for your current level. Unlike those elixirs I gave you before, if you were to use these, every one of your organ, muscle, etc. would break down and you'd most likely die in a matter of minutes, or even less. A shiver of fear coursed through Damian's back when he heard these words. It was truly a case of too much of a good thing could be deadly. Thus, his eyes instead turned toward the heavy handgun in her hand before asking, "Is that the gun you were talking about? It looks impressive." Indeed, the handgun looked surprisingly similar to the famous Desert Eagle, a gun that was as deadly as it was usually impractical in combat situations, mostly because of the ridiculous recoil. However, it took only a second for Damian to realize that with his current strength, the recoil should be relatively manageable. His thoughts were mirrored by Bryn's following explanation. This can put big holes in even an elite martial artist's body. And that's no mean feat, I'm telling you. The people at that level have unified their skin and muscles, which give them a much better defense than you. If you used small caliber bullets on them, they would at most penetrate through their skins and maybe the surface of their muscles, but not much further. But this baby's ammo can go right through them and injure their organs, as long as you aim well, of course. After letting out a deep breath, Damian recalled these few times in his previous life when he went to the shooting range with his high school friends to learn how to shoot a gun. After many sessions, he had been able to bring his skills to a level where he could repeatedly hit a stationary target at around 10 meters without shooting himself in the process. Of course, that was with a small handgun, so although his own feet were probably safe, the chances of him hitting a moving target that would surely shoot back at him was not likely, to say the least. Still, as long as he fired for long enough, he would ultimately hit them, right? While his mind was slightly unfocused, Bryn added, Actually, you don't need to worry too much. That Petrovich guy is certainly not a fighter, and wouldn't join his men if they attacked the penthouse. With him somewhere else, the odds of that man keeping his strongest subordinates around him are very high. Thinking like this, it's even probable that he would only send some worthless goons, since losing them wouldn't hurt remotely as much as losing martial artists. The former can be replaced by random thugs, but the latter need years of training to gain powerful strength. Hearing her explanation, Damian realized she was right, and he had been overthinking. It was not entirely his fault, though, as whether it was Brynhild with her peak master strength, or his own rapid power increase, both gave him a false impression of martial artist being worthless. However, even a novice martial artist was beyond the strongest fighter in his previous life, at least when it came to raw power, though when it came to pure combat techniques, it may not have been as cut and dry. After a brief chat, the two went back downstairs, with Damian holding the empty gun, a few fully loaded magazines, and the 2 ammo boxes. Seeing the dangerous weapon in the young man's hands, Adelia's face turned complicated as she commented in a voice filled with mixed emotions. "So, you lent it to Damian, huh? I really hope you won't need to use it." Seeing the concern on her face, a desire to protect started to grow inside his heart, prompting him to declare solemnly, "No matter what happens tomorrow, I promise I'll do my best to protect the two of you." Noting the resolute glint in his gaze, Adelia's heart felt a slight stirring, which brought her to reply softly, "We'll rely on you then." We resume our story in Damovodsk, Molkovia. The evening went by peacefully, though a trace of tension could still be felt from the 4 Mikhailovs. Whether it was a gaze turning briefly hazy, a jaw clenched tighter than needed, or even a discreet but repeated tap of one's finger. Even Brynhild, who appeared outwardly confident, was wondering if her decision of leaving the 3 alone in Damovodsk was not misguided. However, she knew that bringing them with her to Molvograd would be even more dangerous. Shaking her head inwardly, she told herself, "Forget it. With Damian's current physique, coupled with him using my gun, the 3 should be able to repel anyone trying to break into the penthouse. Of course, that's if it actually happens in the first place. I mean, who would be so insane to try to break into a fortified penthouse? This city might be dangerous, but it shouldn't have reached that point yet." As the tall redhead felt somewhat reassured, time passed by, and after a night of restful slumber, in the early hours of the morning, the 4 found themselves in their personal garage, located under the building. After climbing into the family SUV, Adelia turned on the ignition, waited for the automatic garage door to rise, and then started to drive toward the airport, while Brynhild gave them some last-minute pieces of advice. "Once you 3 get back to the penthouse, lock the door and do not get out, or even open it before I get back. Getting into the building and even reaching our floor is almost impossible, let alone trying to breach or enter the security door. So, as long as you stay inside, nothing should happen to you. To be honest, lending you that gun then might be me being a bit too paranoid." In the back of the car, Damian and Sarah were seated side by side, with the former shaking his head before replying, "I say better safe than sorry. I mean, if nothing goes wrong, it's great, but at least we'd be ready if something unexpected happens." Indeed, although not too apparent before, as his strength kept increasing during the last month, his intuition seemed to grow along, and what it told him was that things may end up being trickier than they expected. While the car was moving closer to the airport, Bryn seemed to catch something from the corner of her eyes, prompting her to observe the vehicles moving behind them. At first, she thought she might have been overthinking, but as time passed and the four were about to reach the airport, she found that her gut feeling was correct, bringing a slight frown to her face. However, she stayed silent until the car parked by the domestic terminal entrance, before turning toward the other three Mikhailovs and stating, "Don't look back, we've been followed. It's that grey SUV with the license plates, ending in 875. I can see 4 men, and although I can't be sure from here, I don't think either of them is a martial artist. So unless you guys have made another enemy, aside from that Petrovich guy, these 4 should be his men." Having some experience dealing with criminals, Bryn could tell that for Petrovich to send 4 of his men to tail them, it meant that the so-called warning sent by her mother's contacts yielded next to no effect. In other words, Petrovich would strike again, and the best moment for that would be when she was not there to protect her family. Feeling a hint of murderous intent rise in her heart, she swiftly let out a breath to calm herself, before asking once more, "Since he sent these men, the chance of him trying something against you 3 once I leave is very high. Are you sure you don't want to come with me?" Now, Damian was usually someone calm and collected, who tended to plan extensively before making an important decision, especially one that could result in a fatal outcome. However, whether it was him being 18 again, or his rapid strength increase, he felt little fear and instead had a strange eagerness to fight. Being now able to casually punch through a brick wall without incurring any skin laceration made his courage grow more than he expected. Of course, his youthful recklessness had limits, and the rational part of him understood that it was not just his life on the line this time. Thus, he turned towards Sarah and Leah before asking them, "I'll follow your decision, Auntie and Sarah." While the latter left the decision to her mother, Adelia, whose expression was somewhat hesitant, questioned Damian. If something were to happen at the penthouse, are you confident you could deal with it?" That was a difficult question for the young man, since none of them knew exactly what they would have to face. However, Damian answered as well as he could. "If it's only a few people with no training and only handguns, I should be able to repel them. If they're novice martial artists, as long as I can stop them at the door by using Bryn's gun, I'd say it's 50-50. Depends on how persistent they are. Any stronger than that, and I'd be powerless." From his words and the matter-of-fact tone he used, Leah could discern his strong confidence, although she did not understand where his certainty came from, not knowing that Damian had already taken a man's life in his previous life. It was enough to remove the last hesitation in her heart. Thus, she answered Bryn's previous question. "We'll stay then. I just hope that you can come back quickly once your match is over." With a slight nod, Bryn replied firmly, "Don't worry, I'll get into the earliest flight after my fight tonight. If all goes well, I should be back by around 1 in the morning at the latest. You 3 just need to stay safe until then." Hearing her words, the other 3 felt more relaxed, even Damian, who realized that his willingness to fight did not remove all the concern from his heart. Having said all that needed to be said, Bryn uttered a few last words of caution before bidding the rest goodbye, exiting the car, and walking inside the airport terminal. As for the other three Mikhailovs, Damian quickly moved to sit in the front passenger seat before urging Adelia with a simple "let's go." Since the car was still running, the middle-aged woman quickly pushed the gas pedal, propelling the car onto the expressway toward the penthouse. While they were on the way, although his senses were far weaker than Brynhild's, Damian still noticed the same grey SUV with the number 875 tailing them. Fortunately, the car was far behind, most likely due to their rapid exit, though with their destination known to these people, it actually mattered little. Shaking his head slightly, Damian thought, "Well, at least that should give us enough time to safely reach the penthouse and lock the door behind us." His foresight was extremely accurate, as the tailing car was being left further and further behind, despite trying to catch up by passing the vehicles in front of them several times. Unfortunately for the pursuer, and fortunately for the Mikhailovs, no one let them through. City traffic at its finest, huh? Well, for once, Damian would certainly not complain. Thus, half an hour later, the three Mikhailovs could be seen walking quickly through their penthouse entrance. After Damian examined the safety door's thickness for a brief moment, he then swiftly closed it behind him. As a strange expression appeared on his face, he thought, "With how thick that door is, they'd need either explosives or a heavy machine gun to get through. As for martial artists, I guess only someone as strong as Bryn could punch through it. Honestly, I don't see how they could even get in. This place is pretty much a fortress." Although he did not let down his guard completely, especially with the previous car tailing incident, Damian still felt his tense nerves relax somewhat, which brought a relieved smile to his face. Now back home, the young man felt an urge to train, not for anything else but to distract himself. While stretching his neck, he mumbled, "Well, I'll just do some light exercises. Not enough to get too exhausted, but still sufficient to keep my mind busy." After informing Leah and Sarah, he went to the gym while bringing Bryn's heavy gun along, before the two women joined him a few minutes later. Indeed, the two felt too restless to be able to sit down and simply watch some TV or read a book. Thus, the three spent the whole morning and afternoon inside the gym, leaving only in between to eat some light lunch. Of course, the mother and daughter mostly chatted, with only Damian able to keep practicing for most of the time. Thus, the sun moved from east to west, with dinner time arriving before they realized it. Done with the training for the day, the three went to take a shower, put on some light indoor clothes, and, feeling famished, went to eat a hearty dinner. With an entire day with nothing happening, the three felt a lot calmer, and thus, after having washed and put away the dishes, they all went to lounge on the living room sofa. Now comfortably seated, Leah turned on the TV before switching to the first channel while remarking, "It's almost 8 o'clock, so Bryn's match should be about to start." As the two TV anchors were indeed starting to introduce Bryn and her opponent, Damian's ears suddenly caught a small sound coming from behind him, so light that if it were not for his senses having strengthened lately, he would have completely missed it. Turning his head back toward the entrance door, his brows furrowed slightly as he asked the other two, while an ominous feeling appeared in his heart. "Did you too hear that sound?" We resume our story in Domovodsk, Molkovia. After Leah and Sarah heard Damian's question, they both felt a surge of alarm, with the youngest redhead remarking, "I thought it came from the TV." Since she had lost her sight a few years prior, the young woman's hearing had experienced a great increase, with her being able to hear the softest footstep, even when others heard nothing. With her confirmation, Damian knew it was not his own imagination. Someone was behind their entrance door and was even likely fiddling with it. Otherwise, the door's thickness would have blocked the sound completely. Although a hint of worry crept up in his heart, Damian knew he had to stay calm and act fast. Thus, he immediately instructed the two women to hide behind the sofa, so that the latter served as a makeshift barricade. As for hiding somewhere else, too risky and too little time. It was better for them to stay close to him, while staying mostly out of the line of fire. Seeing them following his instructions, he swiftly grabbed the gun he had previously set on the coffee table, along with the two full magazines. Setting one in front of him on the sofa, he slotted the other inside his handgun, made sure that the safety was off, and started aiming for the door while keeping his right index finger on the trigger guard to avoid accidental firing. After all, he did not enjoy taking others' lives, so the best way would be to scare away the assailants. Of course, he was ready to go all the way if needed, as their 3 lives were on the line. While his mind was busy conjuring all sorts of situations, the noise coming from the door kept growing louder until he finally saw the door handle slowly move downward, with the supposedly unbreakable safety door being opened wide before his eyes. While trying to understand how the intruders had been able to achieve these feats, his eyes immediately caught the sight of 3 thuggish-looking men, each holding a handgun pointed toward the penthouse interior. If breaking into the Mikhailovs' home did not make their intentions clear enough, the 3 guns ready to fire would do the trick. As the saying goes, attack the unprepared, gain the advantage in battle. Thus, Damian did not utter any word of warning, but instead aimed at the man standing at the forefront and pulled the trigger once. Since the living room was not directly in front of the entrance door, the man had no time to notice Damian's presence, before his mind suddenly registered a loud gunshot and a wave of acute pain coming from his chest, making him stumble backward while the strength in his body started to disappear. After the first shot was fired, the other 2 thugs reflexively jumped back to the corridor, where they each hid on each side of the door. Seeing their teammate lying on the floor motionless, with a puddle of crimson liquid growing below his body, the 2 men felt a sliver of cold sweat sliding down their backs. Both saw the glint of horror in each other's eyes before one of them whispered, "Didn't the boss say that we'd only have to deal with 1 brat and 2 weak women? We just got through the door and we've already got one of us bleeding to death." Shaking his head slightly, the other man retorted through gritted teeth, his tone filled with a mix of confusion and fear. "You're asking me? Who am I supposed to ask, you moron?" While the intruders felt overwhelmed by Damian's warm welcome, the latter let out a breath to calm his tense nerves, though despite his efforts, his hands were still shaking slightly. Below his breath, he muttered a "one down, two to go," while doing his best to aim the gun toward the entrance. Fortunately for him, his martial art training allowed him to maintain decent control over his own body, though his mind was another thing entirely. It was not long before he heard one of the two thugs shouting to him. "Kid, we just wanted to invite you three to see our boss, so just put down your gun, or you won't like what we've got for you. Even if you don't care about yourself, you wouldn't like it if something happened to the two women in your family, would you?" Hearing the other man's words, a sneer appeared on Damian's face as he replied coldly. "Breaking into my home with gun in hand? In my book that's called kidnapping. And do you think I'm a 3-year-old? Dropping my gun? Pah! I've already taken care of one of you, and you two are about to join him soon." Leaving one's safety in your enemy's hands was the best way to end up killed, something Damian was plenty aware of. Better take his chances with a gun in his hand. Taking a deep breath, the young man felt his heartbeat slow down and most of the tension in his body leave him while a strong thought traversed his mind. "I can do it." In the corridor, the two thugs felt torn, as none of them expected such a fierce hospitality from their target. Although these two were ruthless characters and had taken lives before, they were the kind to bully the weak and fear the strong. In this case, they seemed to have met their match and were now facing an even more ruthless person. If they had known beforehand, they would not have been so enthusiastic in volunteering for this easy assignment. Still, since they did accept, they knew that they could not back down. After all, the boss may be generous when it comes to rewards, but he was also merciless when it came to punishment, and several of their colleagues had disappeared after failing an assignment. Between the certainty of losing their lives and only a chance, the two thugs knew what to choose. After glancing in each other's direction, they noticed the same resolution in each other's eyes before one of them whispered while showing 3 fingers. "On 3, we stand up and fire at the kid. 1, 2, 3. Although the man's voice was too low for a normal person to hear, Damian's senses, which were already beyond normal before the event, seemed to experience another growth after his heartbeat calmed down. Thus, his ears immediately caught the thug's words, prompting him to move a few steps to the side while doing his best to aim steadily toward the door. As soon as the word 3 left the thug's lips, the two intruders moved to face the penthouse interior, aiming at Damian's previous location while firing freely. Fortunately, the young man had already moved to the side, and thus was able to avoid the first volley. Seeing the two men standing at the door, Damian aimed at one of them before pulling the trigger once more, easily dealing with the gun's powerful recoil. Like with the first shot, the bullet easily went through the man's right chest before exiting through his back. Feeling his strength leaving him, the man felt a surge of disbelief mixed with reluctance. Dying at the end of a rich and spoiled 18-year-old kid, he was unwilling. But no matter how he felt, his body still lost all strength, falling to the ground powerlessly as his consciousness started to fade. On Damian's side, the latter felt relieved when he saw the man fall, though he did not dare relax as there was still one last enemy to deal with. While moving his gun to aim at the last thug, the latter, who was still firing his gun like a maniac at Damian's previous location, suddenly realized, as his teammate fell into his own blood, that the young man had moved to the side and that he was only firing at shadows. Thus, he swiftly turned his weapon to face Damian's direction, the two men's actions being eerily similar. As Damian was about to pull the trigger, he saw the other man doing the same, and a strong feeling of impending death gripped his heart. Immediately, his instinct took over his body and he jumped to the side, only registering the gunshot sound once he felt a piercing pain erupting from the right side of his stomach. Without bothering with his injury, the young man immediately stood on one knee and aimed at the last thug, pulling the trigger once before the latter was able to aim back at him. A loud bang resounded in the room, followed by the intruder's body shaking from the bullet piercing right in the middle of his chest, which drained the man's strength almost immediately. As the man lowered his gaze to look at his wound, he felt his vision turn black right after his ears caught the sound of another gunshot. Seeing the man's body fall to the ground lifelessly, Damian let out a breath of relief, while lowering his gun downward, its muzzle still hot from the second shot he had just fired. Feeling a strange sense of freedom, Damian sat down on the ground while letting out a tired mutter. "It's done. We're safe now." As soon as these words left his lips, Lee and Sarah quickly stood up from their hiding place and dashed to his side, with Leah exclaiming worriedly, "You've been shot, Damian. Don't move, or it will aggravate the wound." Hearing her words, the acute pain he had been ignoring in his adrenaline-fueled shooting frenzy found itself back at the front of his mind. Lowering his gaze, he saw a red stain growing bigger on his light green shirt, giving him a strange sense of déjà vu. How familiar.
Morning comes too early, hands already warm, working for a better day, trying to keep me warm. Boss man count his tally, we just count our turn. Fair don't come easy.